Yeah.
All right. Well, I think I'm going to get started because you all should get the full amount of time, especially when you're on time. All right. So I'll just do a perspective. As I just said, we are doing weekday Shachrit. We have talked about and already covered the Birchot HaShachar, which are the morning blessings that used to be done at home, but were incorporated into the service. That then takes you to Pesukei de Zimra, which are Psalms. And we've looked at some of those Psalms. Those two things are the lead up to the Shema and its blessings, which are very central, obviously, to the service. And the Shema and its blessings, obviously, then leads us to the morning Amidah. But so let's talk for a minute about, so before we recite the Shema, we do the Baruch Hu. The Baruch Hu is the call to worship, right? But before we're allowed to do the Baruch Hu, we have to look around and say, do we have a minyan? Right? You got to have a minyan for this. So I just wanted to remind you all of that. And I'm pretty sure I read you this. So I'm reading from my Guide to Jewish Religious Practice. And it was on August 29th, 1973, that the Rabbinical Assembly Committee on Law and Standards ruled that they would now allow women to be counted in the minyan. Just putting that out there again, August 29th, 1973. But they left it to each rabbi and congregation to decide whether to abide by the traditional rule or adopt this new rule. So we've come a long way.
Yeah.
A very long way. And what shocks me is that's after my bat mitzvah, because I'm pretty sure my bat mitzvah was January. In fact, I have something here that would tell me the exact date. I think it was like January 26th of
1972.
No, actually, I think it was 73. January 26th of 1973. So yes, this was after. Yeah. Eileen?
It's also after Roe versus Wade.
Right. We were slow to move in this direction. I was not taught to read from the Torah. I was not allowed to read from the Torah. I was not called up for an aliyah. So that all came later. This sentence, so this book that I'm reading to you from was published in 1979. And this sentence, I'll just read it. In an emergency, 9 adults and a minor over 6 years old holding a chumash may substitute. And
What? They're going to take a 6-year-old over a woman?
Ridiculous to me. Susan, go right ahead. Weigh in on this.
My rabbi doesn't allow a child that young, but he does allow pre-bar mitzvah, a child that's in a bar mitzvah class too. And it's usually when someone does have a yurt site.
Yeah.
If there's no yurt sites, they just
Right.
skip everything.
Right. I get it. So I just wanted to, I wanted to see your reaction to that. So Marlene, thank you very much. That was my reaction.
Well, you know,
You can't dream that up.
I'm sorry. There are no words.
You're speechless. Exactly. Rightly so. We're speechless. Eileen, yeah.
Except for women being counted in the minyan. Does Orthodox Shachrit differ at all from conservative?
Well, I don't know what book, we're not familiar with their book. I imagine it's a little longer, that they do more Psalms, for instance. I'm wondering, and I don't know this, but they may actually, because they're Orthodox, do the Berachot HaShachar at home on their own and not need to do it as a group, because it was put in there for us not to have to do it at home. We did it as a group. Mary Ellen, you're shaking your head, so you're agreeing with some of that, but
I think
I haven't been to Orthodox Minyan, but for Shabbat services, they do a lot more that we do, reciting the prayers out loud, but it is at such a fast pace, it takes less time. So there's more prayers, the men's more Hebrew, and less time, just because they're so used
It's
to
kind of
doing
like
that.
the highway versus the back roads.
Yeah, what's that road, the Autobahn? Yeah.
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 Autobahn. Oh,
Right.
well, I guess
Um,
if I was doing it 3 times a day for 70 years, I would know it really well too.
There you
Practice
go.
makes perfect.
Right. They say you need to do something for 10,000 hours to be an expert in it. Well, 10,000 hours.
You reach that
I'm
pretty
playing
fast.
catch up. I'm playing catch up in my 60s.
Yes, exactly. All right. Well, so, we just mentioned that you need a minion and how we get a minion. So this book says the rabbis clearly preferred public to private prayer and praised it very highly. They urged, therefore, that a person should always seek to pray in a synagogue together with a congregation. Dr. Ellie Monk has written, the idea is frequently encountered in biblical and rabbinical literature that the divine presence dwells in the midst of the community, and that the larger the congregation, the more resplendent the revelation of the Shekhinah will be. The community does not suffer deficiencies. What is lacking in one individual is made up by the other. The individual then can only discharge his duties completely when he collaborates with the community. The rabbis therefore placed the strongest emphasis on tefillah b'tzibor, that's the notion of a minyan, prayer in the midst, right, in the midst of the community. Today we add psychological reasons. Public prayer is conducive to greater solemnity and exaltation. Only participation in the community can effectively guarantee the individual's progress toward achieving the highest ideals. I think this, to me, touches back to what we talked about regarding Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur and the Achet, asking forgiveness for all these things that I said, I didn't do a lot of these things, but someone in the community did, right? So we're doing it on behalf of the community. So for this reason, the Torah was entrusted to the community of Jacob, Morasha Kehilat Yaakov, hence also certain prayers may be recited only in the community, in the presence of a minyan. So then it goes on. According to the late Chief Rabbi Cook, the basis of prayer established by the divine wisdom of the fulfillment of man's needs lies in its impelling the moral improvement of man, exalting and stabilizing his mind by strengthening his spiritual powers. The compelling force of this moral training does not come about when a man is in seclusion, but rather when he joins with his fellow men in communal life. Therefore, the main point and purpose of prayer lies in the coming together. Man's intellectual self-perfection can be accomplished by study alone, but the morality necessary for communal life is established through prayer. Hence, public prayer is the main form of prayer, and even private prayer will more readily produce the desired results when it is recited within a congregation. Okay, so
A quick question, Rachel.
Hmm?
In that regard, is Judaism ritual and prayer more communal driven than other monotheistic religions, or not necessarily?
well, I would, I'm not a comparative religion
Sure.
devotee. I took a class like when I was in high school, but that doesn't get you very far. But thinking about it, we have in our midst women who were members of other religions.
Maybe
I-
that's the answer
so
the question.
other than Islam, where they pray 5 times a day, right?
That's fine.
I don't know of another religion that puts so much emphasis on, 3 times a day, 365 days a year. I don't know what priests do, and if they do only 1 time a day or not. I just don't know.
Okay.
Mary Ellen shaking her head.
Me,
Marcia
And-
too?
yeah, Marcia Gale, yeah.
Yeah.
A friend who is a priest, I mean, they'll go through the little service all by themselves, like a Jewish man would do, his tefillin all by himself.
So they use the rosary beads for that or something, and they do it alone?
No,
Okay.
rosary, that's a whole different thing.
Okay.
That's just,
I've never
never-
known really. I thought it was some sort of way to count what you were doing to remind you, but I honestly never got an explanation, so I can't say.
that's more of an individual thing. I mean, I grew up in an area that was very Catholic and was friends with a group of gals in high school, 13 of us, 6 Catholic, 6 Protestant, and me. So, I went to services in church with them, but the rosary is a private thing. People do that at home, and they'll say the rosary at a funeral home, like we would have we said Shiva and have a service at someone's home. That
Okay.
I've never quite figured the whole thing out, but anyway,
Okay.
they're just repeating the Our Father and Hail Mary, and it's just counting how many times you say them, and that's what the beads do
Got it. Well, I got part of that right.
for
Okay.
peace of mind.
I understand.
I think it's kind of interesting, the commentary, and it seems to be myopic unless you have experienced practicing other religions. It seems kind of myopic. How can you say you cannot experience certain things unless you had that opportunity to do it? I mean, how do you know that you cannot
Right.
do X, Y, Z unless you've had that experience beyond Judaism? It seems like if I'm interpreting what you said the correct way, that you can't get so-and-so unless you're in a community in this prayer.
Well, I think it's a combination of things. I mean, certainly it's saying that you, I think it's saying we have a moral obligation to appreciate and respect and look out for those others in our community. And that when we embrace them and look around and see who they are and add that to our prayers, it raises us to a different level of prayer. It makes us aware of beyond our own perhaps perspective and personal thoughts of what's happening around us, and that we're better as a community, and that we have obligations and responsibilities for others in our community.
I understand that aspect of it. I guess what I'm saying, suppose you're in a situation where you cannot be with other people, and yet you can attain a certain level and still respect the concept of it. But, I almost feel like, what do you mean I can't do something because I'm alone?
Well,
I might look at alone as I'm in the universe, in the woods, in so-and-so, and my communal people aren't people, but Mother Nature or something like that. Maybe I'm just.
No, I think you're right, but perhaps you're parsing it a little too narrowly. So certain prayers, like the Baruch Hu, you don't need to say when you're alone, because it's a call to the community to come and get ready to say the Shema. You certainly say the Shema by yourself all the time. It's not a problem, right? And you can pray the entire service alone. That's not a problem either. So, and in fact, you would be encouraged to do so if you did not have a minion you could join.
I was just putting it out there.
That's why I'm reading this stuff, to give you guys stuff to think about. And I think you bring a lot to what we talk about, because you have a different perspective, and you're learning it as an adult when it was just ingrained in me as a small child. And I didn't ask those questions because I was too small to think of them.
Can you say Kaddish as a single person?
I
didn't think so.
Well, that's, can you, so you would say it silently. Marjorie, please join in. Sorry about that. I had a phone call I had to take. We were taught when we were little kids that you could say Kaddish alone with yourself.
Right.
But to say it out loud, you needed a minion.
Exactly.
That's
Right,
what I was taught. I can't say that that's, gospel or what everyone else was taught, but that's what Bethel and Patriarch taught.
So I just checked with Larry. He said women, the Orthodox way is not our way, but that women don't need a minion to say Kaddish. They can say Kaddish, but they don't need a minion. Many women prefer a minion because you want to be part of the community, especially in the conservative movement. But for the Orthodox women, they can say Kaddish by themselves. I remember
Because they don't recognize them as part of a minion, so they would never be able to get a minion.
Right, and maybe that ties
that
back to the
stinks.
time-bound era. You don't.
Right.
So, but Bobby Quall, Bobby Quall from
Yes,
Shoal.
yes.
She's pretty traditional. She was down at Loop Synagogue, and she was there, and there were like 9 men, and she wanted to say Kaddish for one of her parents, and they told her to go upstairs. She was like never so hurt in her entire life,
Oh.
and but she said she understood it, but when it happens to you, it just severely impacts you. And then the 10th person came. So
Marlene?
What about when you light a candle at
A
home?
Yortzeit candle. Okay,
I'm just
so
thinking of
let's talk about a Yortzeit candle for a minute. All right, let me
Okay.
see. I'm pretty sure, give me a half a second because I have to look in the, so.
Maybe I've been
Yortzeit-
doing it all wrong all these years, Rachel.
No, there is no prayer. There is no prayer that goes along with lighting a Yortzeit candle.
I
because-
wondered about that.
Yes, so this I know for a fact, and give me 1 second. I'm just looking to see Yortzeit. Here we go. 145. Yortzeit.
Yeah, we can be in here. They're done. They painted.
All right, hold on, let me just, okay. The Memorial Light, 294. Give me 1 second to turn to the right page. So, the Jewish tradition, let's see. Each year on the anniversary of the death, we keep the Yortzeit, a solemn day of remembrance in prayer and meditation. The chief expression of the Yortzeit, recitation of Kaddish. Yeah, but that's not what I want. I want the candle. Okay, a light is lit in memory of the deceased on the eve of his Yortzeit and allowed to burn throughout the Yortzeit. Yeah, this is not telling me what I want, but I happen to know, I was taught this, and Yortzeit candles came into being much later, well past, I think, the rabbinic period. And so because they were added later, there's not a bracha that is associated with them. And they're certainly not, they're not part of the requirement, right? The type of the commandment that says you should do this mitzvah. Asher kiddishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu. That it's way past that. It's not. So we just light it quietly, and that's all there is to it.
So
Rachel?
saying the mourner's Kaddish after I light the candle is wrong? I guess I've been.
Well, it's
No.
not a requirement.
Okay, that makes sense. That's a important distinction.
Mary Ellen, sure.
I just checked on the Chabad website. They do have a prayer for Chabad, and it's in English, so I can read that. I light this candle to bring peace to the soul of, and then you insert the Jewish name, whomever, then bat of, and then you insert the father's Jewish name. And if the Jewish name of the deceased or the deceased father isn't known, the secular name can be used. So it's kind of nice. I like this prayer to bring peace to the soul of, and you insert their name.
Always
But
said,
it's kind of a nice prayer.
Yeah, right. And so Marlene, in that notion, so if you think about, so Kaddish, the prayer Kaddish has really nothing to do with a person who's just died, right? We have several different kinds of Kaddish. They're all almost identical, but they all are basically, in my mind, a corollary to the Shema. They are exclaiming our belief in this one God and our hope and dream for everyone believing in this God and this God, right? Becoming,
Uplifting.
yeah.
It
So
glorifies and sanctifies his name. That's what the
exactly,
manuscript-
precisely, right. So there's nothing wrong with, and in fact, if in your mind, by lighting that candle, that's how you feel, those go together perfectly. And I imagine that because you associate Kaddish with in
Mourning,
synagogue, the
right,
memory
well,
of that loved one,
yeah.
right? They all go together perfectly. Makes a lot of sense.
And
So-
ironically, the first person that I've ever said Kaddish for is my late father, and he was conservadox. He was the ritual person to whom I would go ask my questions. So I didn't, and I was living in Cincinnati as a newlywed, here in my own little world. So thank you. That was very helpful.
Sure. Well, and so this takes us back to, I was saying, so we did the Birchot HaShachar, we did the Psuke de Zimra. Now we're preparing for the Shema. So you do the Baruch Hu, but prior to that, actually, when you finish Psuke de Zimra, you say a Chatzi Kaddish, because that's, we use these Kaddishes to break up the different parts of the service. Let me check the chat. Okay, so, Audrey. So there's things in the chat. Do I need to read these right now or not really? No?
No,
Okay.
I was doing the same thing that Mary Ellen was doing. And Chabad, I had already found, but it was the second one. The first one is one I put in there, which is a little different. And so I have the feeling that groups are kind of making it up. I don't know that there's an official Yartzeit candle prayer, but
Well, so as I say, in conservative Judaism, there is no prayer
yeah.
for lighting a Yartzeit candle. Okay, so I'm just trying to find very quickly. Okay, Chatzi Kaddish, I'm just quickly gonna, so in Lev Shalem, which it's, the translation of Chatzi Kaddish, may God's name.
What page are we
I'm just going to read you the English. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
May God's name be exalted and hallowed throughout the created world, as is God's wish. May God's sovereignty soon be established in your lifetime and in your days and in the days of all the house of Israel. And we say, Amen. May God's name be acknowledged forever and ever. May the name of the Holy One be acknowledged and celebrated, lauded and worshiped, exalted and honored, extolled and acclaimed, though God, who is blessed, is truly far beyond all acknowledgement and praise, or any expressions of gratitude or consolation ever spoken in the world, and we say Amen. So, you can say that whenever you feel it's appropriate. To me, it's kind of like a Shehechianu.
Right, Bruce?
So it's always, I've had this conversation with my rabbis over many years. When we're at a loss for a blessing, say a Shechechianu. It's a perfectly appropriate. Thank you for letting me get to this time in my life, this occasion. So a Kaddish is similar to that to me. You can find, it's meant to you're just saying outwardly, or if you're saying it silently, inwardly, this is how you feel and this is your hope, right? So you're reaffirming your belief in Judaism to me. That's what Kaddish is all about. Okay.
Yeah, my rabbi once said that the reason it's associated with death is that when somebody, a loved one dies, that is the time when you're most vulnerable to doubt your belief and faith in God. And so this is for you to be strong and be a good Jew.
That is exactly correct. That's what I was taught too. Let me go to the chat. So, oh yes, Susan, I know the translation in Sim Shalom is different. I prefer the Lev Shalem one, which is why I read it. But I'm going to share my screen right now, and so yes, here's the Sim Shalom one. May God's name be exalted and hallowed throughout the world that God created, as is God's wish. May God's sovereignty soon be accepted during our life and the life of all Israel. And let us say amen. May God's name be praised throughout all time, glorified and celebrated, lauded and worshiped, exalted and honored, extolled and acclaimed. May the Holy One be praised beyond all song and psalm, beyond all tributes that mortals can utter. Let us say amen. Susan, go ahead.
I just want to say the word after lauded in the Blue Sim Shalom is praised, not
Okay,
worshipped.
not worshipped. Okay, yeah. Well, and I think they've modernized this is all I'm going to say. And I appreciate that modernization. Okay, so can everyone see my screen? Do I need to make it bigger?
A little bigger would be nice.
Oh, yeah.
I can make it bigger.
Thank you.
How's that?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Perfect.
Okay, so this is the Baruch that we say before the Shema, and as I said, excuse me, we need to have a minyan for the Baruch and to say it out loud, etc. I wanted to read a little bit from, again, my Guide to Jewish Religious Practice, because I think it's interesting. And it also talks about, for Shachrit service, those of you who lay tefillin would have your tefillin on already, right? And so there are certain things that start to happen at this juncture in the service because you have your tefillin on. So let me see. Right, the Shema section of Shachrit begins with Baruch Hu. The congregation responds with, Baruch Hu et Adonai Hambarach. The congregation responds with Baruch Adonai Hambarach le'olam va'ed. And the reader, inasmuch as he not only leads the congregation in prayer, but prayers for himself as well, repeats the congregation's response. Similarly, a person called to the Torah follows this same procedure. The Mishnah prescribes that the Shema should be preceded and followed by benedictions at both the morning and evening services. The morning service has 2 benedictions before the Shema and 1 after. The first benediction begins with Yotzei Or. So we did that last week, didn't we? Hold on. No, I take it back. Yotzer Or is after this. I apologize. So Yotzer Or comes, so the Baruch Hu, this is here. I'm sorry. I'm losing my place. So Yotzer Or is here. So yes, we did some of this prayer last week. And at the bottom of it is what he's referring to. But so I'm sorry that I'm kind of all over the place. Since the Shema proclaims the unity of God, this benediction forms an appropriate opening. Based on Isaiah, it offers thanks to God for creating the light of day and for renewing his creation each morning. The second benediction praises him as the giver of the Torah, and the third as the Redeemer of Israel. All right, so the Shema itself consists of 3 biblical passages, one from Deuteronomy, which is the Shema, Deuteronomy chapter 6, then the Vahaya, which is Deuteronomy chapter 11, and Vayomer, which is Numbers. So I would refer to them slightly differently. We refer to it as the V'ahavta and the Vayomer, but that's okay. We talked about this. By reciting the first paragraph, one accepts the yoke of the kingdom of heaven. By reciting the second, which actually she didn't print here, the second paragraph of the Shema, the yoke of the commandments, the third paragraph contains a remembrance of the exodus from Egypt and mentions the tzitzit, which we recall all the commandments. When one prays alone without a minyan, the Shema is preceded by 3 words, El Melech Ne'eman. And they don't print that in the book because this is a book for services, for a community, right? But this I found interesting. El Melech Ne'eman. God is a faithful king. The source of this addition is Kabbalistic. The Shema has 245 words. According to tradition, the body has 248 parts. In order to make the number of words in the Shema correspond to the number of parts, these 3 words are added, as if to say that man should worship God with all the parts of his body.
So that's
When-
gematria, in other words.
Exactly. When one prays with a minyan, the reader repeats the last 3 words, Adonai Elohechem Emet, right here at the very end here, Adonai Elohechem Emet. I always wondered why they added Emet. Making the number of words equal to 248 without the addition of, at the beginning, El Melech Ne'eman. So I finally got the answer to my question from literally when I was a teenager, where the Emet come from. Okay.
Could you repeat what Marlene said and you agreed with?
Oh,
So
I'm sorry,
gematria, gematria, are you familiar with what gematria is? So gematria is, it's a, I don't know where it comes from, probably during the rabbinical time, where they, certain letters have certain values.
Oh, okay, I know that.
And
Like
so
Chai
they
with
add up.
18.
Right,
Yeah.
Chai.
right.
And
Okay.
do we know what the parts are? Like are they bones and organs, or do we not know what the parts are?
It does not tell me.
Okay,
And there's not a footnote, so I don't have an answer.
okay.
All right, so, and we know, okay, so we're going to skip this. Okay, scholars believe, okay, never mind, I will. After the first verse of the Shema, right, we say quietly, Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed, right? Verse is not from the Bible. It is rather a response to the mention of the name of God in the preceding verse. Scholars believe this insertion dates from the period of Roman rule when emperor worship was practiced. The insertion is intended to emphasize that only God, who is eternal, is to be praised, right? So Baruch Shem Kavod Le'olam Va'ed means, right, praised be the name of the one whose glorious sovereignty is forever and ever. As a matter of prudence, it is said quietly. You didn't want to offend those Roman people with whom you were disagreeing.
How respectful of us.
Totally. Dr. Max Arts suggests that the verse is recited in an undertone because it is non-biblical. It is a non-biblical passage interpolated into a section of biblical verses, which as such have a higher degree of sanctity. So we didn't want to offend those verses either.
But you say that one prayer loudly on Yom Kippur, don't we?
We do, absolutely. That is the day when we do it nice and loud. Okay, so at the end of the Shema, the word emet, the first word of the last benediction, is joined with the concluding words of the Shema to make Adonai Elohechem emet. Thus, no hiatus is introduced between God and truth. So I kind of got to that on my own, the whole idea of emet means truth. I know that. Okay. So halachically, this book tells me there should be no interruption during this entire portion of the service, except to answer amen to a benediction, to respond to the Baruch Hu, or to join the congregation in reciting the Kedusha. Okay. All right, so now here is where I want to talk to you about tefillin. So I had this figured out. Now I'm going to forget it. Maybe she doesn't have the prayer up in her list. Okay, so in preparing for this section of the service, if you are wearing a talit, but prior to us getting to this, there's a point in the prayer before when you get to the word V'havienu toward the end of you take the tzitzit in your hand, and you'll see this around a synagogue when people are preparing.
You did pass that up, Rachel. If you go up, if you're looking for that wording,
I am.
you're right there. See it?
Okay.
As we prepare to chant the Shema, we gather the tzitzit.
Oh, here, V'havienu, right here. You're absolutely right. So this box, V'havienu l'shalom, me'arba Kanfot ha'aretz. So this is telling you the arba kanfot, those are the four corners. So that's referring to the tzitzit.
Before you continue, is the Shema found in the Sim Shalom prayer book or no?
Yes, I'm sure it is.
Is it
Yes.
the in the blue book?
It's
Yeah,
the
the-
page 100
Okay.
in the blue book for the morning
33.
service.
This
the
sheet,
morning
this sheet said 33 and I was completely confused. Thanks.
Yeah, this is Debbie Lempert's different version of.
No, I realized that after the fact. Thanks.
Yeah, I do not have the version she has, and I prefer the translation in my Lev Shalem, so I have my Lev Shalem open, not my Sim Shalom, because I couldn't put all the books here and still read.
So
Okay,
it's a page 100 and
in the blue Sim Shalom.
102.
Okay, okay, so, okay, so let's get to, and I can do it from here. So let's, the via hafta, okay? So, okay. So this is interesting. Let's just read through. V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol lebavcha u'v'chol nafshecha u'v'chol me'odecha. Will one of you with the book open read me this in English, that first sentence?
Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might.
Thank you. V'hayu hadvarim ha'ela asher anochi mitzavcha hayom al levavecha. We go again.
And these words which I command you this day, you shall take to heart.
Okay, right. Al levavecha. Okay. V'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam b'shiftecha b'veitecha uvlechtecha v'derech uvshaftecha uvkumecha.
All right, there's a short sentence. You shall diligently teach them to your children. And then it says you shall recite them at home and away, morning and night. But I didn't hear Layla and
Okay,
Lila.
so,
So
but I still, interesting. Teach them again.
Shalom translates that totally differently.
Yeah, so go ahead, Marjorie, read the Lev Shalem.
Teach them again and again to your children. Speak of them when you sit in your home, when you walk on your way, when you lie down, and when you rise up.
Yes, I believe that is the more specific, correct or exact. Okay, so then we
I
go
would say
on.
Orthodox.
And that's certainly what I was taught as a child.
Me too.
Ukshartem liot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot beinenecha. So this is a reference to actually wearing tefillin. So one of you read to me in English.
okay, I'll do mine if she wants to. You shall bind them as a sign upon your hand, and they shall be a reminder above your eyes.
Okay, Lev Shalom. Bind them as a sign upon your hand and as a symbol above your eyes.
Right. Okay. And so what my guide to Jewish religious practice tells me is that to show awareness of the commandment and also, okay, love for the mitzvah, we touch the shel yad, so that's the one on your hand, with the fingers of the other hand when you say the phrase ukshartam liot al yadecha, because that's the one that refers to binding it on your arm, and repeat the gesture with the shel rosh, the one on your head, when you say v'hayu letotafot beinenecha. So you touch them gently as you're referring to them as a way of understanding and showing that you get it. I want to back up for 1 second before we go on, just because I forgot to read this aloud. Some people, so here, I always wondered where the practice of covering your eyes came from when you say the Shema. And this book tells me that the practice is from Rabbi Judah Hanassi, the 3rd century in the Common Era, to place your hand over your eyes when you say it to prevent distraction. So there's the answer to that. That's how long ago that's been around.
But it doesn't seem to be for every recitation of the Shema, when there's more than one in a service.
It depends on the people.
Okay.
I think some people are very diligent about it. They really go to a place. Okay, so then the last,
Rachel, is the covering of the eyes for the Shema ubiquitous to all the branches of Judaism?
I don't know the answer to that, but I think so.
I believe I've been to Orthodox and to Reform. I think I've seen it, but I haven't been to other shuls recently. Okay.
Somebody else had a hand up, I thought. Marjorie?
In Lev Shalom, they give a slightly longer explanation of covering your eyes.
Okay, read to us.
What page are you on, Marjorie?
155
Thank you.
Lev Shalom.
in Lev Shalom. Okay, where does it start? I'm reading aloud of the passage later. Meditation as well, a way to focus on God's oneness is, okay, that has nothing to do with eyes. Okay, the Babylonian Talmud reports Rabbi Judah the Prince was teaching, needed to stop since the hour for reciting the Shema was passing. So he covered his eyes for a moment and then continued teaching. In this story, reciting the Shema was but a momentary interruption. Later, Rabbi Judah's act of covering his eyes came to be seen as a sign of deep contemplation, and so it became the custom of many to cover the eyes while reciting the Shema as a moment to meditate on God's unity.
Oh, wow.
So same person they're talking about, Judah Hanasi.
Right,
They're just giving us a little more information. Thank you.
a little more depth.
Right. So, and the last sentence of the first paragraph, which is the Biahafta paragraph, Uchtavtam al mezuzot beitecha uvisharecha, which is you'll put them on your doorposts, right? Basically inscribe them upon the doorposts of your home and on your gates, is how I've always known this to be.
Mhm.
Okay, so now she doesn't have the second paragraph here, so we're going to skip the second paragraph and go to the third. And this is where it talks about tzitzit, and where the tzitzit that you've wrapped around your finger, you're going to kiss when we get to the reference. So, you know, there's a parallelism that here this book tells us that when you say ukshartam liot al yadecha, so you understand that you're talking about that you'll put them as a sign on your arm, you touch your box on your arm, v'hayu letotafot beinenecha, that you understand that you're wearing them as a sign between your eyes, so you gently touch the one at your head. So now we get to this, Vayomer, and one of you please read in the English at the end of each sentence for me. Vayomer Adonai el Moshe lemor.
The Lord
To
said to
Moses?
Moses. Mhm.
Daber el bnei Yisrael v'amarta alehem v'yasu lachem tzitzit al kanfei vigdehem l'dorotam v'natnu al tzitzit kanaf betil techelem. So that's a very long sentence that is not, usually we say this in shorter phrases, but I purposely wanted to read the whole sentence. Go ahead, Mary Ellen, please read the translation, and then we're going to go back and break it down.
Okay. Instruct the people Israel that in every generation they shall put fringes on the corners of their garments and bind a thread of blue to the fringe of each corner.
Yes, perfect. Okay. So, Daber el bnei Yisrael v'amarta aleichem v'yasu lachem tzitzit. When you get to the word tzitzit, you have your tzitzit wrapped around your finger, and it is common to kiss it. Al kanfei vigdehem l'dorotam v'natnu al tzitzit, again, you kiss it. Hakanaf patil techelet. So this is the reference to the blue thread on the tzitzit. Okay. V'haya lachem letzitzit oritem oto uzkartem et kol mitzvot Adonai va'asitem otam v'lo taturu acharei levavchem v'acharei einechem asher atem zonim achareichem. All right, Mary Ellen, what does that mean?
Looking upon it, you will be reminded of all the mitzvot of the Lord and fulfill them and not be seduced by your heart or led astray by your eyes.
One of you who has Lev Shalem, Marjorie, maybe will you read the, I think there's a slight difference. Will you read it?
Thou shall be your tzitzit. You shall look at it and remember all the mitzvot of Adonai and fulfill them and not be seduced by your eyes and heart as they lead you astray.
Okay, pretty close, but a little, again, more modern. So here again, Haya lachem tzitzit, you kiss your tzitzit, or item otos kartem et kol mitzvot Adonai v'asitem otam le'orehem le'arei enechem asher atem zonim acharei. Okay, we only kissed it once there. Lema'an tizkaru va'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'yitem kadoshim le'lochechem. Mary Ellen?
Then you will remember and observe all my mitzvot and be holy before your God.
I think that's the identical translation in both books.
Pretty much. I think there's
Yeah.
one word difference, but it's immaterial.
Okay. Ani Adonai Elohechem asher chotzeti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim liot lachem le'elohim ani Adonai Elohechem. Mary Ellen?
I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. I, the Lord, am your God.
And then we add the word emet, truth. So as we read earlier, the concept of of truth being the kind of the finishing point of the idea and also getting us to that special number.
Rachel,
Yeah.
this may be a question for the rabbi or Chazan, but if your talit does not have blue, is it not kosher?
Interesting. It was kosher, and the reason that was because the particular blue from that particular
Era, yeah.
no, not from the air, from the
A
particular
dye.
from that particular mullets or whatever.
Exactly.
It was.
Right.
Cannot be
Very, very,
reproduced.
very expensive and rare to get. That's what I was told.
Yeah, my guess would be not, because I have talit made in Israel sold by our Judaica shop, and many people I know don't have obvious blue. And
So yeah, so that's why it's acceptable to have it's kosher without the blue.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Indeed. Thank you very much. And it is hard to get, I believe that, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any
I think
other-
the main thing that makes a tallis kosher is also the fabric it's made out of.
that is very true.
Yeah, linen or
and the
wool.
knots, the ties and the knots.
Mhm.
Hold on one second. I'm just, I'm going to go to another section of this book where I think they also have an answer to that, but I had to find the page.
The book that you're referring to,
Mhm.
when you have a chance, can you show me the cover?
Sure. Can you see it? A guide to Jewish, I'm
Raise
sorry?
it up. Can you lift it up? Oh, it
Now
got
it's
blurred.
out of
Never mind.
focus.
It went out of focus. That's all right.
Have you sent us, have you sent us that name already? Can we
I
go back
have.
and look?
I
Okay,
have.
And-
I can send it again.
that would be great. And did we get an email from last week or not?
Yes,
Okay,
we did.
I didn't send the recording from last week yet.
that's what I meant. Okay.
Okay, so here's, the talit is usually made of wool, silk, or rayon. The tzitzit must be made of the same material, except that woolen tzitzit can be used on every talit, regardless of the material of the talit itself. Other materials can be used only when the talit is made of the same kind of cloth. The tzitzit are attached in the following manner. All right, I'm gonna, well, I guess I'll leave my screen up. Okay. At the corner of the talit, there is a hole or two, an inch or two from the hem. 4 threads, 3 of equal length, and the 4th longer, are brought through the hole and folded over, now making 8 threads. These are folded so that 7 are of equal length and the 8th, designated as the shamash, is longer. A double knot is made with the 2 sets of 4 threads.
Cool.
After the double knot, the shamash is wound 7 times around the other 7. Another double knot is made and the shamash is now wound 8 times around the 7 threads. Again, a double knot and the shamash is wound around another 11 times. The process is repeated with 13 rings and then a 5th and final double knot is made. The length of the tzitzit after this process should be about 18 finger breadths, with the part containing the knots making up 1/3 of the total length. When putting on the talit, one should hold it with both hands, recite the blessing, then put it over the head, wrap it around, and recite the verse, Ma yakar hasdecha. We have mentioned that the Torah says you shall look at the tzitzit and you will be reminded of all the commandments of the Lord. The method of making the tzitzit helps in achieving this purpose. Thus, according to Rashi, the 8 threads correspond to the 8 days that elapsed between the day that the children of Israel began their journey from Egypt and the day they sang the song of the Red Sea. The 5 knots correspond to the 5 books of Moses. The number of rings wound around the tzitzit equals 39, corresponding to the numerical value of the letters in Adonai Echad. The 4 corners ensure that one will see this reminder in whatever direction one looks. In addition to wearing the talit while reciting the morning prayers, one should take the tzitzit in one's hands and kiss them during certain parts of the service, which we just discussed. According to the rabbis, this is done to show devotion and love for the mitzvah. The tzitzit are kissed at the end of Baruch She'amar during the recital of the 3rd passage of the Shema, whenever the word tzitzit is mentioned, at the conclusion of this passage with the word emet, and in the succeeding prayer with the words kayamet and olamei olamim. Okay, we didn't get to that prayer yet. If one removes the talit temporarily during the service with the intention of putting it on again, one does not have to repeat the blessings. If one thread is missing, the talit should not be used. Today, the tzitzits come ready-made, attached properly to the talit. One may remove the tzitzit from one talit to another, or one may move them from one to another. One may move the tzitzits from a talit and put on better ones in their stead, or replace a thread that has been severed. The discarded tzitzit, however, should be treated with consideration due to holy objects. So that means it has to be buried. You want to hear about tefillin for a minute?
Sure.
Okay, so let's stop this. Okay. Tefillin. We have quoted the statement of Rabbi Yochanan to the effect that one who wants to accept the sovereignty of God should perform his hygienic needs, then put on his tefillin and recite the Shema. The purpose of the tefillin is best expressed in the prayer that is said before putting them on. God has commanded us to wear the tefillin on the arm in memory of his outstretched arm, opposite the heart, to imitate that we ought to subject our heart's desires and designs to the service of God, blessed be he, and on the head, opposite the brain, to intimate that the mind and all senses and faculties ought to be subjected to his service, blessed be he. Okay, we talked about this already. Tefillin consists of the 2 black leather boxes. Each of these contains the 4 passages of Torah which mention the mitzvah of tefillin and Exodus, each paragraph of which is interpreted as containing a reference to tefillin. So the Shel Rosh has 4 passages in 4 separate compartments, whereas Shel Yad, 1 parchment in 1 compartment, right? We talked about this weeks ago. Okay. Tefillin are put on before beginning the daily morning prayers, right? They're not worn on Shabbat or major festivals. So this says the tefillin are obviously worn as a sign, since Shabbat and festivals themselves serve as such signs. tefillin are not necessary on these occasions. I don't know if this still holds true today, but this it says the practices of the Sephardim and Ashkenazim differ during the intermediate days of Pesach and Sukkot. Sephardim do not put on tefillin during the intermediate days, but Ashkenazim do. The Hasidim follow the practice of the Sephardim. That would be not to put it on. In Israel, too, the general custom is not to put on tefillin. So during the intermediate days. I imagine that, again, this was written, my book is a copyright of 1979. I imagine that the rabbis in Israel have updated the custom just like, because of the intermarriage of the Ashkenazim and the Sephardim, and they keep trying to adjust so that there's less difference. Do you want, so I know I talked about this, but I'll do it one more time. So here's the procedure for putting on your tefillin. You put on your talis first, then you start with the shel yad, and you put it over the muscle of the left arm, with it protruding out toward your heart, right? And they talk about your wrapping. I'm not going to get into all this. It's very specific, right? And then you put it on your head. So
We saw a video, right?
right, I sent you a video.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Okay,
Can I ask you a question about laying tefillin, Rachel?
you can.
You said that once you do it, you need to keep it up. Would there be any value in at least learning how to do it once, even if we chose not to do it daily? Or is that like sacrilegious?
I think there is value in learning. So for instance, in my synagogue, and I imagine in yours too, that part of the bar mitzvah preparation is that they teach you how to do it and they require you to do it. You need to bring your tefillin to that class and do it Sunday morning at Shachrit. And I will tell you that my son and my husband did that, but they don't do it every day. They have not continued to do it every day. But halachically, and I said this about once you start, you need to continue. That is the opinion of, I believe, the Rabbinical Assembly, the conservative movement of women who particularly go into the rabbinate. So if they're going to ordain a female rabbi and she begins to embrace these commandments, she then has to continue. She can't decide, well, now I'm a mother and my time is getting interrupted and I can't keep doing it. So most synagogues, I believe conservative synagogues follow the practice, at least the ones I've encountered, of if they're going to have their congregation led by a female rabbi, that she practiced this daily, that she, in other words, she sort of follows what the halacha says with regard to a man, even though she is a woman. But
Yeah, that was an important distinction I missed. Both of my children obviously learned to, and I have pictures of them in their B'nai Mitzvah albums. But yeah, so it's really for the female rabbis, as opposed to, they have wraps every winter, every February in our synagogue. And the kids do it, but I was just wondering, as an adult female.
absolutely, absolutely. And it's tricky. I can tell you personally that the men in my family struggled and needed help. It's a little bit of an art, especially when you have a brand new set of leather straps and they're a little stiff.
Like,
And they don't, they
like
don't want to
shoes.
stay naturally where you put them. And you're not sure how tight to make it, right? And you don't want a tourniquet.
it's not a tourniquet.
It's not a tourniquet. Right.
So funny. Thank you so much.
Sure. So, to me, ladies, this is, I know you can practice reading the Hebrew. This, we're at the section and the intermediate class where we're really kind of getting into the meaning, the reason for our practice and doing the things we're doing. And I just felt it was a little important to dig into this a little bit. Something we've all said lots and lots of times, but again, the meaning and the why and the order and how it all fits together. So I hope that was interesting to all of you. Am I missing important things in the chat? Oh, okay. No, that was fine. And the book. Okay. So the book, again, A Guide to Jewish Religious Practice, and I'll put it in my notes again. I know I've sent it once before. I'll send it again.